Keep that in mind. What's that? And so we're starting the recording now. I will be definitely jumping into our program very quickly here as soon as everybody's in. And so we'll be starting, I would say, in about 2 minutes, because that's 11:15 is when we're supposed to start. So we'll be jumping in right there.
There's a line out for the women's bathroom.
Okay, so we might be able to hold off for a few minutes.
I'm like, you pointing at me? What? I just got here.
All right, so it looks like we're up and running again. Hopefully we're not going to die when everybody is.
Okay. So I'm going to get you set up for your class. Yeah. Now, this won't link to your email. It's not, you're not tied together. It may or may not be.
What's that? So if you need extra chairs, there's folding chairs, the ones in the very back, not the white one. So if you need extra chairs, please grab them from the when we just ate. Oh, not the white one. Not the white one. Please don't say it.
I know, so I put it over there.
That would probably work. And you might have to give me a heads up if you see me wandering in that way. Don't fall. Are we having not friendly connections?
Transferring rooms. It's for some reason it did not like that. Yes.
So that's an access point right there, is it not?
That?
In the back, or is that
motion
security?
sensor.
That's security.
Yeah.
Hello. How are you?
And the last time we were there at Harvard, they still never gave me a password.
Talk to him. Oh, he's your man.
That one? All right.
Mr. Gambino is your man. That'll work. That'll work. I'll have to be careful. I have a feeling I'm going to have a sore hip at some point today, but that's okay. It should be that they're not automatically connecting to the Wi-Fi. Do you know the password is education to go, right? Is it or is it fortune to go? So it's %fortune T, the number 2, and then G0 exclamation point.
That is right.
Yes. I don't have control of anything.
Okay.
I can try.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah, I only know how to temporarily set it for like 2 hours.
Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is 11:17. It looks like we have just about a full house, and we're going to get started. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Wes Pepper. I am the master teacher, and I was very humbled to be named one of the architects of our technology program today. I don't think you can really call me an architect. I think that the title definitely goes to Mr. Gambino. He was the one that did the research on the Chromebooks and helped us decide to pick them. I have turned on the air conditioning. Hopefully it'll be cooling us off and it'll get cooler in here as we go. I know we have a large crowd. So just to start, our real goal today is to focus in on data-driven instruction. Last week, you all had instruction on using your curriculum to meet the goals of the Common Core State Standards. We will have ongoing professional development surrounding the use of technology in the classroom, as well as continuing to use our curriculum to meet Common Core. Today's focus is data-driven instruction. And the main tool that we have at our disposal for data-driven instruction is our new assessment program, which is called Illuminate Instruction. Illuminate Education is really about collecting data and then making decisions based on that data. So today we're going to talk about how to use Illuminate. You're going to log into Illuminate for the first time. Some of you may not be able to log into Illuminate today because you may not be in the system yet. If you're a new teacher, there's a good chance that you're going to have to look over somebody's shoulder for today. And as soon as Illuminate updates, and what Illuminate does is they go into our other school system. How many of you know what Power School is? Everybody knows what Power School is? Okay. So Power School goes through a process every year that's called rollover. And when it rolls over, it takes all of our teachers who have been here, all of our veteran staff, and it rolls all of them over into the new school year, and then it brings in all of our new staff, and then we put everybody in classes, and then we assign students to everyone. And so with rollover, that process usually doesn't happen until about the end of the first week of school, because a lot of it is about getting new students into classes and everything like that. So what happens with Illuminate is Illuminate goes and grabs that data. They have a program that goes in through sort of the back end of our program, and what it does is it essentially grabs all of the data for the student information, it grabs all of the data for the teacher information, and then it uploads itself into Illuminate. And that updates once a week. We're going to be using Illuminate for a large portion of what you used to use Power School for. The only thing you will still use Power School for is attendance. After that, Illuminate will be where we do our grade books. So one of the first questions you've got to be asking yourself is, well, when do I start using grade books? And obviously we can't do that until the rollover is complete. So for the first week, you will not have access to a grade book. You're going to have to keep track of scores for that first week. However, the program will still do the grading for you. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. Okay? I'm going to show you how to make your process of collecting data a lot more simple than it used to be. It used to be you would give a test, you would grade a test. Some of you used GradeCam before, but you would take the test and then you would have to input all the scores into Power School, and then eventually at the end of the trimester you'd have to take all of the data out of Power School and build a report card for every student. And if you had 29 students who needed report cards at the end, and it was a Word document, it took, guesstimate, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours to do report cards at the end of the year. At the end of the trimester. A day. Okay? Every night, collecting data meant if I gave a quiz that day, if I gave a 10-question quiz, it would take me an hour, 2 hours, and suddenly my life outside of school starts to shrink, right? And my whole life is school. And here's the one thing that we know. The best way we can serve our students is if we know what they know. That's where data-driven instruction is, okay? If you talk to schools that have made the jump from the 700 API to the 800 API, all the way up to that 950 and 975 API, the number one determining factor that changed for them is they went to a model of data-driven instruction. We've been talking about data-driven instruction for the last couple of years. And data-driven instruction is a huge part of what we do. But one of the things that we don't do well is one of the problems we have is we do it very inefficiently. If you have to grade an assessment every day, how many times do you give a quiz, get done with the end of your school day, and go, I don't want to grade this. And then it sits on your desk. And then day 2 comes, and it sits on your desk. And then day 3 comes, and it sits on your desk. And then day 4, and then day 5. And then at the end of the week, you give a unit test, a chapter test, a theme progress monitoring assessment. And on top of all of your quizzes, now you have 30 questions more that you have to grade. And so your weekend comes, Friday, your day ends. It ends at 4 o'clock. All the kids go home, and you look at your desk, and there's a pile of stuff on your desk that's 10 feet high. And now you have to grade it. And so you have 2 choices. You can stay Friday night and grade it late into the evening, or you can put it in a crate, take it home with you, Saturday. Students. And it's 2 or 3 or 4 students instead of 10 or 11 or 13. And it's one concept, not 7. Does everybody see how this becomes easier? As we start to implement Illuminate, we're going to talk about Illuminate today. Illuminate is sort of that key that's going to change everything for us. It is the key that is going to allow us to give a quiz that's either 5 or 10 or even 20 questions long, and as long as it's multiple choice, you run it through the machine, and really the machine is your dock camera. You take a picture of it, 30, however long it takes you to run 30 sheets of paper past your camera, and then the scores pop up. And then you know what your students know. And in 2 minutes, you can look over the data and go, this student needs more help, this student needs more help, this student needs more help. Tomorrow, I'm going to make sure I go back and reteach them. Everybody think that sounds like a good thing? All right. It's not all great news. The first year, you're going to have to take some time to put the assessments in. But I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay? It's going to take a little bit longer on the front end the first year. But if you put the time in, that time starts to go faster and faster and faster. So I want to start by letting you know how to find the information that you need. So we're going to go over our agenda. We started at 11:15. I just welcomed you. I'm painting a picture of what data-driven instruction can do for you. Okay? I also want to make sure that everybody has access to these slides because I want you to be able to go back to them. Okay? So the way you can access the slides, and I'm going to show you this, is everybody should have access to the instructional materials folder. It's a shared folder on your Google Drive. I am going to get out of my presentation and actually show you what that looks like. So if I escape, I'm going to go into my Google Drive, which looks exactly like your Google Drive. And what you're going to find is you have a section that says My Drive, and then you have something that says Shared with Me. And you may not see it right away. So what Mr. Gambino has done, and I think this is brilliant, is he's made it very easy for you to find the files. Hit Shift and the dash key, which will give you underscore, and you're going to click on where it says Instructional Materials. So you click on Instructional Materials. I'm going to stop and wait. Is everybody there? It's %fortune to go, and it's coming around. Okay, so you've now gone into instructional material. This is a shared file that's across all of our schools. Everybody has access to it. Within that, there's a folder that says CCS Planning Resources. I want you to click on that. And now you're going to see a bunch of things that we've created over the last couple weeks. The one that I want you to focus on is Summer Symposium. If you click on Summer Symposium, it is going to bring up everything that we're going to be working with today. I've brought samples with me to show you how to do some of the things that we want to be able to do. But the thing that is probably most important to you right now is the actual slide presentation. This is the Summer Symposium Data-Driven Instruction. It's available to you to follow along. If you open it up, you can follow along with it completely. You will always have access to this. I'm not going to delete it. I'm not going to get rid of it. You can always go back to it. The other thing you should know is I'm also recording it. So everything that I do is being recorded. And what I'm going to record for the most part throughout this is the actual slides. So you'll hear my voice over the slides. Not only that, but you'll hear your questions over the slides. So if you have a question about something and you think you can go back and look at it, now this is going to be a 3-hour video. So you're going to want to kind of have an idea of where to look. But eventually, and I'm saying eventually because I have no idea when I'm going to be able to do this, what I'm going to want to do is go back in and shorten it into sections. And I can do that. And I'll send everybody a link to where they can find these videos so you have access to go back and look and relearn. We're going to cover a lot of information today. And that some of you are not even going to be able to access everything that I'm going to show today because you're new or because you've come into the system at a different time. You may even be teaching a different grade than you taught last year, which means your access is different than I knew when I was setting it up the first time. I am going to make whatever changes I can make on the front end, and then I'm going to ask you to tell me what I need to change. So at the end of the day today, if something's wrong, you need to send me an email, and I will go in and fix it probably beginning of next week. Okay, because we've got our PD through the rest of this week, and then after that, there's other things going on too. But starting next week, when you guys all go back to school, my schedule actually lightens up. So I can actually start to give you direct support, individual support that you need. Is everybody clear about that? Okay, so I'm going to go back to our video. I'm going to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So we're sharing the Summer Symposium. And again, you'll see that on the video itself. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. And we're going to get back into our presentation. And I can see everybody who's already accessed it. I see all of our pictures and our little icons. That's great. I know that people are actually able to follow along. I'm going to present. Now, if for some reason you still cannot access these slides, this may be more of a challenge than I originally thought because our network seems to be a little bit shaky right now. You can still send me a Hangout message, a Google Hangout message, and I can send you a link to this slide. I'm thinking that that may not work as well as I originally had thought because of our network issues, but if you try it and I get a message that says to check in, I'll do my best to send you the link, okay? Is everybody able to access the slides? Is anybody not able to access the slides is a better question. So I've got 1, 2, Mr. Gambino, maybe you could support the people who aren't accessing the slides? Is that okay? Excellent. All right, so after we've done that, one of the things I always say up front when I'm doing professional development is that I'm always going to model best practices. And so when I say I'm going to model best practices, it means sometimes I'm going to do things that I would do with students. It's not because I think your students are need to be treated like students. Okay, I want to be very clear about that up front. When I model something, it's simply something that you can put in your back pocket and use in your classroom. These are best practices that are used and always get good results. Okay, so the first one I'm going to model is I want to do an echo read of our objectives. So after me, Fortune School of Education teachers, leaders will be able to access and use Illuminate Education. Develop assessments in Illuminate Education. And complete data reports for weekly data reports for data-driven instruction. So the first question you're going to have if you've been here for a few years is, what does our data report look like? Because every principal asks you to turn those in, right? Yes. Thumbs up if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the process I'm going to show you today is how to use Illuminate to simplify that process, to streamline that process. And the document, and I know there's been many iterations of the document, I have simplified it considerably. Okay, you're going to see the document at the end of the day today, and it's the document that you're going to use. All of your principals know about the document itself. They know exactly what it's supposed to look like, what they're looking for. I'm going to be training them on how to respond to the document you send them, so you get feedback that's helpful in helping your students get where they need to be. You're going to probably be sending these documents and last name. Now, if you were here last week, I originally thought it was your first initial last name, just like your email address. It's not your email address. It's just your first initial and your last name, all one word, all lowercase. Okay? You have a temporary login. Your temporary login password is password, all lowercase. As soon as you sign into Illuminate, what you're going to be asked is to create a new password. Please, please, please remember your password. If you don't, please write it down so you have a place for it. However, and I'm going to say this as carefully as I can because I don't want you to take it too... It's easy for me to fix it for you. If you forget your password, it's something that I can fix for you. I cannot guarantee you I will fix it within an hour. Okay? If you lose your password, I cannot guarantee you I can fix it within a day. I will guarantee you I'll fix it within 48 hours. You send me an email saying my password needs to be reset, I'll fix it for you within 48 hours. When I reset your password, I am going to reset your password, and your password is going to be your last name. So it'll be first initial last name. Kind of like which other password that we use that's like that? Think Central. It's going to follow that model. That's the model I'm going to do if I end up resetting your password for you. What I would recommend is, because this is all school-based and it's all for the same thing, is that you use that system for your password. Now, if I have to reset your Think Central password, I'm going to say this once, because I hope that I don't have to. If I have to reset your Think Central password, Think Central has decided that they don't like the simple passwords anymore. The Think Central password now has to be an uppercase letter, a number, and a special symbol. Exactly. Somebody said boo. I'm in agreement with you, because that means it makes it much harder for me to give you a password that's easy to follow. So don't forget your Think Word password, your Think Central password. Those of you who are new, you already have a password that has a capitalized first letter on your name. The number 01 exclamation point at the end of it. I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. Again, this is all school-based stuff. You're getting access to stuff that's all school-based. We are very much an open book when it comes to our resources. Okay? If you find that for some reason you need access to a part of Think Central that I haven't given you access to, all you have to do is ask. Let's say you're a 3rd grade teacher and you have access to 2nd and 4th grade materials right now, and you're like, I got a student who needs 2nd grade materials or 1st grade materials. Shoot me an email, I'll fix it for you. Okay? They don't like us very much for doing that, but I do have the ability to give you that kind of access. If you are an ed specialist, I'm giving you access to everything. You have the same access that I have, from kindergarten all the way through everything that we have that's up in 5th grade. Now, some of you are going to notice that 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and this doesn't really apply to you because you're the K-2 group, but 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, all of their stuff is not as good as yours because they were part of our initial buy of our material, and some of the stuff we got for free, and so it didn't include everything that you guys have access to. We bought everything for K1 and 2, which means you have access to everything that there is to offer. Okay. Questions about that? Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go into Illuminated myself. And like you said, my password, I've actually changed mine already, but I'm going to sign in as myself. And you're going to do the same. So I want you to sign in now too. Okay? You will only have access to one site, whichever site you are on. So if you're at William Lee, you'll have access to William Lee. If you're at Hardy Brown, you'll have access to Hardy Brown. If you're at Fortune School, so on and so forth. I am going to sign in as part of FSE because that's our parent organization. And when I sign in, you can see that this is what my sign-in looks like. I'll give everybody a minute to sign in. Yes, do your new password now. So remember, if you're new this year, you won't have access yet. Yeah, click on that link. That's okay. It's going to. And I'm going to explain it to you in just a second. Okay, so all I want you to do is sign in right now. If it looks different, that's okay. Because this is your first time in the program, and so it's going to have different things for your login. This isn't going to work yet. I know some of you are without, so you're going to have to follow along over somebody's shoulder today. Work with somebody today. I like it. I've already got some people aggressively taking other people's stuff. I love it when that happens. All right.
Are we signing in under password?
Yes.
Using that?
Yes.
We're not changing it.
No, well, it's going to ask you to change it as soon as you sign in. You're going to have to change it. As soon as you sign in, it's going to ask you to change it, and you're going to have to do it. Otherwise, it will not let you go any further. Yeah, and one of the things we can do is multiple people can log into the same account. So that might be something worth doing. All right.
What's your password?
Password.
I, however, will not be eating. So hopefully you guys will feel sorry for me. You don't have to feel sorry for me at all. That's why I had 2 breakfasts this morning. So I'm good. Lots of protein bars and eggs, and I'm in a good spot. All right, so you've now signed in to Illuminate. And what you're looking at right now is your dashboard. Okay? We are going to go from right to left across the board, across the top of Illuminate. On the far right-hand side, you're going to see a link that says Control Panel. If you click on the link that says Control Panel, it's going to show you all of the information that you have access to. Okay, so when you look at the control panel, there's a few things you can do. The first thing you can do is change your password. If you need to change your password for some reason, you've created one that you forget too often and you want to make it easier to remember, you can go do that. This is also where you go to sign out. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you are inactive on the program for, I believe it's like 3 hours, it will sign you out automatically. There's no reason to feel like, oops, I always have to sign out. Because what are you not going to give your students access to? Your Chromebook, right? You're not going, if you are going to let them use your Chromebook, then you absolutely want to sign out before you do, because you'll give them too much power. Okay? But if you're not going to let your students use your Chromebook, this is something that you probably don't have to worry about. Over here in the green box, you'll see it says enrollment, enrollment rostering data. Right now it says today's date. And when it says today's date, that means you have 0 information, because today no classes have been rostered yet. Let's say you wanted to go back and look at last year, though. So you can change, and I do this all the time because I'm going to use it to show you how to do an assessment. If I change that and go back to this date last year, and I hit Save Changes, watch what happens to my dashboard. Now all of the information is actually populated. Now I have data for all of our schools. It's all combined because I'm under Fortune School of Education. So right now I'm looking at demographic distribution, I have a bulletin, I have Illuminate assessments, and yours is going to look different. And I'm going to show you why in just a second. Okay? The next link over, so in the right, what are the things you can do under the control panel? I'm going to show you the control panel. Hold on. All right, what are the things you can do in the control panel? First thing, you can change your password. What else can you use the control panel for? Yes? Sign out. Sign out. What's another thing you can do with the control panel? Control panel.
Look at last year's data.
You can look at last year's data. Okay? So last year, is there going to be a whole lot of data for last year? Probably not, because we didn't use Illuminate very much last year. We imported all the data from PowerSchool, but we don't have everything. through the trainings, and my role is to turnkey it. However, it may be that I'm not doing as good a job as I can. First thing you should do if I'm not doing as good a job as I can is ask questions. Second thing you should do is send me an email telling me how I can be better. And then the third thing you should do is go and look at the lessons and get some extra help. Okay? If I can't help you, that's where I'm going to direct you, and I'll probably even go do it with you. Okay? But this is a place to go to get help. All right, so moving across to the left, the next link you see is Dashboard. And if you click on Dashboard, it brings you back to the home page. That's this page right here. It looks like my internet is kind of working, so I think we're okay. Now on your dashboard, this is where you get to personalize the information you see. So the first thing you can do is actually eliminate those things you don't want. So let's say you're not interested in knowing what Illuminate wants to announce. You hit the X and it goes away. If you don't want the bulletin, you hit the X and it goes away. Now you have an assessment list and demographic distribution. Let's say you don't want any of that on your page. You can hit the X and literally eliminate everything from your page. Those are called widgets. Okay, they're information that is collected and given to you in a simple, easy to read way. Now, if you delete all of them, your dashboard isn't going to be very helpful to you. Well, let's say you want to add information. So you click on the link that says Add Widgets, and you now have a list of things that you can add. And yours is probably shorter than mine at the moment because you haven't been given permissions to everything yet. But as we continue to grow and understand what the capabilities of Illuminate are, I'll give you more things to have access to. The things that I would use if I were you are my assessment list and my student birthdays. And now you'll see it looks like, uh-oh, where did student birthdays go? And the thing is whenever it adds a widget to your page, it just puts it all the way to the right at the bottom. So if I scroll down, there's my student birthdays. I can grab that and I can move it to the place that makes the most sense for me. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a minute or two to play with that. So go ahead and put the widgets up that you want to put up. So at this point, so go down to the one you have. Which one do you want? That one? Click on. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the bulletins are actually about updates to information. It's not going to come from us.
Oh, so I don't get
Yeah.
it. Oh, I just are there ever any important?
Oh, I have. So like,
Very good. Okay, so you've had a chance to play with your widgets. Okay, so on the dashboard is your home link, right? So on the dashboard, you have the opportunity to add widgets that give you information that may be useful to you. Okay. Again, going from right to left. So we started at the control panel. We've gone to the dashboard. The next thing you're going to come across is the Assessments tab. Okay. We're going to use the Assessments tab a lot. So I'm not going to go into it very much. But the thing you should know about the Assessments tab is you can access and create assessments there. Okay? The beautiful thing about the Assessments tab, and actually go ahead and click on it right now. When you click on it, it's going to ask you what you want to do. And the thing I want you to do right now is just go to where it says List Assessments and highlight that and let it go ahead and go to the assessment list. When you list assessments, what you will see right now is that you have some assessments that are shared with you. This account that I'm on right now doesn't have a lot of assessments shared with it because it's my admin account. So I'm not in as a teacher. What has been shared with me are the summative assessments you're using, your entry level, and your end of the year assessment, as well as your first trimester assessment. This was the stuff that you used to do your planning last week, right? Everybody knows what we're talking about. So your list of assessments should be shared with you. Now, again, some of you have changed grades. Some of you are in a different access point than you used to be. That's okay. Shoot me a quick email saying, hey, I'm in 3rd grade now, because what I did when I shared these is I just shared them to grade level. I can share them to you individually too, which means if you're in a different grade level than you were last year, and remember, this is using information from last year, I can share it to you individually, and you'll be able to have access to whatever you need. Okay? One thing you should know is because I have admin control, one of the things I can do is I have this little gear wheel here. And what that allows me to do is I can actually become you. So if you are ever struggling with something and you don't know how to do something, one of the things we can do is we can actually have a phone conversation, and I can log in as you, and I can help you look for things that you may not be able to find. It's one way to show me, hey, this isn't working right. Can you fix it for me? And I can log in if you can take me through the steps, even if we're remote. So people in Hardy Brown, this could be really helpful, as well as using the Google Hangouts and everything else. But this is something that we can do even if we don't have access to Hangouts. If you can tell me what is going on, I can log in, become you, and I'll have access to everything that's on your page. Okay? If I become another user, and one of my favorite users to become right now is Mr. Gambino. He's been where I've done all of my troubleshooting, right? If I've shared something with everybody, he's been the one that I've gone through and shared. So you can see right now, when I become Mr. Gambino, in his assessments, there is a list of the assessments that he has access to. So that includes the summative assessments that he created, that he and his team created, I should say. Mr. Grima was a huge part of that, in developing the 1st grade summative assessments. And so he has access to those. Not only does he have access to those, but he also has access to assessments that are part of your curriculum. We're going to talk about that a lot more in a few minutes. But I just want to point out that you'll see the math assessments are all available to you. The ELA ones are not. And I'm going to explain the why as we get to that and what you're going to have to do about that. Okay? All right, so if I continue to go across the right, the next one that I see is reports. The reports give you access and the ability to create specific reports. We are just at the tip of what that's capable of. And when I say that, it means that there's a scheduled Okay, The last place you're going to go is to where it says students. And again, I'm guessing that the internet isn't liking me right now. Ah, it does like me for this. Okay? Here, you have the ability to look up a student. And the nice thing about having the ability to look up a student, let's say little Johnny's had a rough day. What do you want to be able to do when little Johnny's had a rough day? You want to call home, right? You want to have some information about him. Let's say it's in the second week of school. You don't know Johnny very well yet. You don't know much about Johnny, so you've decided that you want to take a look at Johnny in particular. So I'm going to go enrolled in the academic year because that's what we have access to right now, but this is Mr. Gambino's class from last year. So I do a search, and it's going to bring up all of Mr. Gambino's students. These are Mr. Gambino's first grade class. And when I'm looking for little Johnny, I see Jonathan Bean. So I'm going to go click on Jonathan Bean. When I click on that link, this is what it's going to bring up. This isn't very helpful to you. This is a glitch in their system right now that's easily but if you come up to this page, all you have to do is go up over here where it says student name and click on that. And it's going to bring up a page that is actually very useful. So I'm looking at Mr. Bean, little Johnny Bean, and I can see that Johnny Bean is male. He was born on the 15th of April. I can see that he has an IEP. So if it's only my second week of knowing him, knowing he has an IEP, maybe I didn't know that in the second week. Well, now I have some context on, okay, I need to go talk to our ed specialist before I call home. So this piece of information is very important. As I scroll down, I can see what his class was last year, and this was his schedule, and since he's a first grader, it has all of Mr. Gambino. That's how we set up our grade book, right? Okay. As we continue to scroll down, we can see where he was at. Our contact information. This is going to be the important part. Obviously, we only have the information that parents provide us with, but I see that his mother is named Rochelle Mayberry, so I can be very, very conscientious when I call and ask for Miss Mayberry instead of Miss Bean, right? So now I can ask for Miss Mayberry, and as I talk to Miss Mayberry, I have her phone number, and that's her work number, so I know I have to call her during what time? Work hours, probably, if I'm gonna actually get in touch with her. And I'm gonna have to know that I might have to be patient. Because if she's at work, maybe she can't take the call right now. Right? And I don't want to get anybody in trouble. That customer service part that Miss Fortune was talking about, this is part of that. You have some information going in that you may not have had before. You have access to information in a way that you haven't had before. Okay? If you were really, really good with PowerSchool and you used it a lot, if you were a power user, you did have access to this before. But not everybody did. And I know a lot of our staff didn't really understand how to get to this information. That's one of the reasons why I'm showing it to you. Okay? Are there any questions about that? Okay. All right, I am going to go back to our presentation. So I'm back in full screen. All right, so quickly, a review on what we just learned. From right to left, in the control panel, what are the things you can do? Everybody, the first thing is? Sign out. The second thing is? The third thing is? Okay. In our dashboard, what do we use to make it personalized? Very good. For assessments, what can we do in that folder? Good. In reports, what can we do in that folder? Okay. Grade books. We're going to do a PD after the first of the year. Not the first of 2015, the first of the school year. So after the first day, probably within the first 2 weeks, one of your first PD sessions is going to be how to create and use the grade book. Okay? And that can only happen when all of our student information has been collected, all of our new teacher information has been collected, put into the system, and then rolled over to this system. We're going to do our best to get that done within the first week. We may not. I'm just gonna put that out there. We're doing our best. This is new to us too. So this is something that we have to learn. This is one of the harder sides that I don't have anything to do with, but I'm going to be pushy and get it done for you. Okay? So probably the second week of school we'll do a PD on it. Okay. So we've got through Illuminate the overview. It's 12 o'clock. I want to make sure everybody is on. Everybody understands everything we've done. Okay, we've covered a lot of information. I know we're going very fast. What I would like you to do right now is just to go back and run through it again real quick. Look at your control panel. Look at your dashboard. Look at the assessments list. Look at the students link that you have. Okay, all of those things are going to give you access to different things. I'm going to take this list off, and now what I want you to do, everybody, the first thing I want you to do is go change the year that you're looking at. What students are you looking at? Go change the year that you're looking at. I'm going to come around and check in and see if you've done it. So the first thing I want you to do is change the year of the students that you're looking at. Just turn it to June 18, 2013. You can still change the year that way. Okay. And so what you should see populate your widgets, depending on which ones you have up, is information about students you had last year. Just the last year. I changed that. All right. The next thing I want you to do is go find, I'll come back and check in with you in just a second, is go find what assessments have been shared with you. So what assessments have been shared with you?
So I wouldn't have put assessments. I look at like the one that's there, but it's different than this.
And then so if you put here, this has.
Or is this just not enough?
No, that's everything that's been shared.
Oh. Okay.
You have a question? They should be. If they're not, I'll go fix it. I can't fix it right now, but send me an email saying it hasn't been shared. Okay. Your kindergarten?
Okay, so I was at Allen Rowe last year.
Go ahead. Close out of that. Go to your dashboard. You're in the overview of your assessment. So in your dashboard, it should give you your student list. No, I think and just scroll down. Hello. Starting next year. Yeah, but there's no actual data. Right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, come on back for me. Come on back. Who can tell me one assessment that was shared with them? What's one assessment that was shared with you? Summative 1, good. That means I did some of the summatives right. Some of you may not have the summative shared with you yet. If you don't, let me know, and I will get them shared to you. I know, the kindergarten in particular, I need to focus on. Anything else? Yeah. Grade 1, because you were a first grade teacher last year, right? So I'm going to actually go in and share 3rd grade with you. 3rd grade, so I'll share that individually after our PD's over today. Send me an email. If you have the wrong assessment shared with you, send me an email saying which ones you need so I can make that happen. I can't make it happen if I don't know, and I will not remember. I promise. I'm trying to do my best, but I won't remember everything that we talk about. Okay? Questions about that? All right. So, can somebody look at the schedule and tell me what time lunch is going to be served? 12:30. All right. So, yes.
In terms of assessment, so if I create a custom assessment, say I create the sample one, I want to delete that assessment.
Yes. I'm going to show you that right now. Excellent. So, let's talk about developing and eventually deleting assessments. All right? The first thing where did I say, and I'm sure Robin said this too, where do you always start when it comes time to create an assessment? Always start in your curriculum materials. Uh-oh. That didn't like me. So if I hit my curriculum materials, I am bringing up a link to ELA has time saver lesson resources. Okay, this is going to be important for ELA. The reason why this is important for ELA is your time saver lesson resources have your biweekly assessments in them. And the biweekly assessments are a great resource. However, are the biweeklies aligned to Common Core? No. So what should you compare the questions of the biweekly on to? What should you compare it to? To the Common Core standards for one, but also when you're looking at question type, what should you compare to? The summative assessments. And if you're in a tested grade, which none of you are, but if you were in a tested grade, you could also go look at the release questions. So eventually, the Smarter Balance Consortium is going to come out with summative assessments for your grades too. That's at the state level. It hasn't been done yet. Trust me, as soon as it is done, I am going to be bringing it to you. Because I know we need to have as many samples and as much to compare to as possible. So let's say you start with your biweekly, though. You scroll down, and one of the things I noticed about most of the biweeklies that's actually pretty nice about them is they're mostly multiple choice, especially at your grades, K1 and 2. So you start there. You look at your questions, you compare them to questions on your summative assessment, and then if you need to make changes, you can make changes in the wording, you can make changes in the answer choices, you can make those kind of changes. Now, can you make the changes on this document itself? No, it's a PDF. Unless you have Adobe Acrobat Pro, which costs about $600, you're not going to be able to do that. So if you want to change a question, simply print this piece out, cross out the question that's on there, and put in your own. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing that. I know this isn't the happy moment that we all look for. If you could edit it, I would tell you how to edit it. There isn't a way unless you have Acrobat Pro. However, if you make copies of the information, put it into a Word document, think about it this way. If you put the work in this year, how much easier is it to use it next year? Really, right? And here's the other part. You're probably going to have to deal with this for this year next year, probably 2017. Because the state adoption for new ELA curriculum is supposed to be in 2017. Which means the state will adopt their materials, and then we're going to have to go through and look through the long list of materials and find the one that meets our needs the best. And then we'll probably do our adoption about midway through 2017, which means you'll probably have new materials when? 2018. Okay, so what I would say now, in a transition year, there's always a little bit more work to do, right? So you're probably going to want to build out as many of your materials as possible. In some cases, you're going to find that you don't have to make the change. There's not a lot to change, so you can simply use it as is. But if there is a change, then you make it. Okay? Is everybody okay with that? All right. So the next thing, after we've started with our curriculum materials, our next place to go is Illuminate. Now, in many cases, an answer sheet already exists, but it's only going to be for math. Okay, so ELA, you're always going to have to create an Illuminate. You're going to always have to create an answer sheet in Illuminate. So if I go to Illuminate, I am now in the assessment part. If you remember, I start here, I go to my list, and I go to List Assessments. When I go to List Assessments, I'm going to go see what's available to me. And for ELA, I don't have anything available to me, so I'm not going to be able to use it. I'm signed in as Mr. Gambino right now. So I don't have an assessment for ELA. If you look on the math, it simply has the pre-test and the post-test. So quizzes, things like that, you're not going to have access to. So you're going to spend a lot of time developing answer sheets for short quizzes that you're going to get. Okay? When you go to develop an answer sheet, you're, instead of going to List Assessment, you're going to go to Create a New Assessment. So click on that. It's going to ask you a question. Okay. You have some options. You have some options when you're creating an assessment. The first option is on the fly. Now, if you're doing it on the fly, what that means is you've already learned how to download a multiple choice sheet. You've already bubbled in the correct answers, and you simply scan the sheet that you're using, take a picture of it. So I'll show you what it looks like. It's going to jump into here. Oop, I got to tell it how many questions I want. I'm going to go 5 questions, and I hit OK. And it's going to access like this. Here's a fun picture of me. Guess what you're going to put in that picture? Your answer sheet. And it's going to fill in this for you. And then you're going to scan student responses, and then you'll have a score on it. Now, this is for that, hey, I want to give a quiz that I just thought of because I'm watching how things are going in class today, and I have 5 questions that I'm going to call an audible. Now, do I recommend that you call an audible every day? No. Is it possible that you might have to call an audible on one day? And you still want to assess what your students know? And you still want to be able to grade it real fast? This is one way to do that. Okay? So you do that, and then you scan student responses. You can save and view results and go from there. I'm going to show you what that looks like in more detail. Okay? That's one way to do it. All right? I'm going to go back to create assessments. The way you're going to find yourself using most often when you're using curriculum-based assessments, when you simply have to create an answer key, is the manual setup. So you click OK. Again, you have to tell it how many questions. I'm not good at telling it how many questions before I go on. You can see. But now you're going to give it a title. So your first part, you're going to give it a title. You can make one that's called practice test. You can see I've made this practice test numerous times. So I make my practice test. That's the only piece of information I have to give it. Now, the more information you give it, the easier it will be to find. Let's say you're working with your second grade team, and you're doing the first bi-weekly for your second grade team. Now, if you're not making any changes to the bi-weekly, or even better, you've had a conversation with your second grade team and said, we're going to change questions 3 and 7. And I'm going to go ahead and make the answer sheet, and I'm going to share it to everybody so we can share the work. The more information you give, the easier it will be for them to find it. So you'll share it with them, and then it'll start out at the top of their list. Well, what if they don't use it that day? It starts to go down their list, and it gets harder and harder and harder to find because you make more and more assessments. Or next year you want to go back to it and use it. When you do a search, the more information you give, the easier it will be for students, for your colleagues to find it. It'll be easier for you to find it. Okay? All right. So you build your test, and then you hit save. Once you've done that, it will save the assessment for you. All right. After that, you have options. You can link standards. Now, do I want you to link standards to your questions? Absolutely. The reason why is because if you link standards to your questions, what's going to happen? When you import this to your grade book, it will populate the standards for your grades. Which means when it's time to make a standards-based report card, instead of going in and calculating how they did on each standard, what do you have to do? Hit a button, and it makes it for you. Okay? Now, if you go back to the biweekly, where's my biweekly? There's my biweekly. Okay, you have your answer sheet. What's missing from this? Standards. So you're going to have to look it up. Okay, you go into your curriculum, you see what parts, what your standard is. Is it on the answer sheet? I thought the answer sheet just had answers, but I could be wrong. Okay.
I don't know if it's in the, actually on the answer sheet or it's just in the.
That makes sense. Okay. So you do definitely want, the theme test I know has standard tests, but not necessarily this. Okay? So you absolutely want to attach question types to standards. When you go through and make your test, you want to be the person who's doing this. So I'm making my practice test. I go here. And so when I do this, now when you've been doing your planning, what's the one thing that you had to do that's different than last year? You had to correlate to the Common Core standards, right? So you're going to connect these to the Common Core standards. If you go to select subject area, let's say we're working in English Language Arts, we'll go to English Language Arts, we'll go to first grade, and then we hit search. And again, this looks a lot like how we make assessments in the first place. And I'm going to show you how to make an item assessment in a second. This will help with too. But these are set up in clusters. So for ELA, there's clusters in literature, informational text, foundational skills, writing, different writing clusters, as well as language arts, even all the way down to speaking and listening. You open the cluster, and you'll get the actual standard itself. This CCR is Common Core Standards, or California Common Core Standards. You don't have to worry about it. What you're looking for is the number, or the area, which is language arts, the number, and usually this is the grade, and then this is the number itself. Okay? And so you click on that. Let's say you decided you want that standard in particular. The next place you go to is alignment. You have 5 questions. It should have the standard giving you the option of aligning it to it. Maybe I forgot to save. I bet that's what happened. It is what happened. Sorry about that. Don't forget to save at every step, because otherwise you run into having to do this again. So I go here, I bring it down, I choose that standard. Now I'm going to go link selected standards. So now we have that standard aligned. You can go align all the standards that are in your quiz, and then you go, okay, so I want this standard to be linked to this question. Okay? And so those are the standards they are. And so if you have multiple standards, it'll spread out across the screen. And you can click on the standard it goes with. Some of the questions might go with more than one standard. That's okay. You can attach it to 2 different standards. You hit save. Now it's successfully saved. And now you need to put in your answer key. So I always go through and find out what my answers are. And again, you have options. let's say you want to model your question after a question that's on the your summative assessment. And some of your summative assessments allow students to pick more than one answer. So let's say question 2 is allowed to have more than one answer. You can do choices A and B, right? And so both of those will be correct. Yeah.
So you don't need a separator or anything like that.
Okay. And then you hit save again. And now your test has been made. Again, if you want to share, you can share with a lot of different options. So if you go down to the share with, and I'll let everybody get to this point. I'm going to make sure I go nice and slow so everybody's with. So for you guys, when you have your, if you guys do all your yes, exactly. Okay. So I've had good questions that I definitely want to get to. So when you're sharing, you have a couple options to share. You can do share with site and role. You can do site and grade level, site and course, site and department. For you guys, it's going to be probably site and grade level if you want to share it across the whole grade. If you want to share it to somebody from another site, you have to share it with them specifically. So it's going to ask if you want to share it with the user. I'm going to say he wants to share it with me. So there I am. He's sharing it with me. Now, this is something that you really want to pay attention to. When you're sharing, the permissions you give are very important. You can give them the permission to view and download. What that means is they can actually take the test, download it, read it, and use it, but they can't scan student answers. Doesn't help them at all. Right? So you want to make sure you give them the option of administering the test. Okay? So those are the two you always want to check. Now, can edit. Can edit is a dangerous thing to share. What that means is anybody who has access to the test can edit it. If they edit it, it's edited for everyone. So if you've given the test already and you have student data and somebody goes in and changes the answer key, all of a sudden your student data that once looked so great now looks terrible because you said the answer was B. You taught your students how to get to the answer B. They got to the answer B and they got it right. And the first time you look at the data, it looks awesome. You're stoked. You gave somebody permission to edit it. They went and changed the answer key. You opened it up the next day, and your student data looks sad. Because they all answered B, and the answer now is C. And that's no help at all. So, two things are happening. One, your colleague wants to be able to edit. Two, you don't want them to change the key because it messes up your student data. Makes it look like you didn't do your job. And you really did do your job, so that's not really fair. Right? Okay. So, if you don't give permission to edit, once you go back to your assessment list, and I'm going to exit out of here very quickly, and you go to your list, you'll notice that you have these little check boxes over here. So let's say you want to edit the practice test that got shared with you. And I didn't share it with you actually, so you're not going to see it there. But all of the assessments I've given you, none of them have I given you editing ability. What that means is you cannot edit them. However, what you can do is if you scroll here, you can go down. I'm sorry, that's not correct. You have to click on the link. And what you can do is you can duplicate the assessment. And so when you duplicate it, and where did it go? You can edit the duplicated one. It's because I didn't share it. This wasn't shared. Yeah. So it's here. Yep. And if you click on duplicate, you can make the second one, and that one you have access to edit. Okay? So if you share an assessment with somebody, don't give them permission to edit it, because they'll just duplicate it and edit it if they need. Is everybody clear about that? Okay. Now, to answer some of the quick questions. One of the quick questions I got was, well, I have these practice tests on my list that I don't want anymore because they're just taking up a bunch of space and I want to be able to delete them. Okay? So you put checks in the 2 boxes. You scroll down, and at the bottom there's a drop-down menu. There it says edit, delete, share, unshare, so on and so forth. This lets you do the same thing to multiple assessments at the same time. If you hit delete, and then you hit submit, it's going to give you this big red glaring box that requires you to check 2 spots. Yes, I want to delete. Yes, I want to delete. Okay? I am aware that I'm going to delete. Now, normally, you would think, push the green box, because that means go. No, it doesn't. That means, never mind, I don't want to actually do this. You're going to be frustrated if you hit the green button all the time because it's not going to do what you asked it to do. If you really want it to delete, you have to hit the red button. I don't want it to actually delete this time, so I'm not going to. But if you wanted to delete something that was on your list, you could do that. I'm not going to. I'm going to say, never mind, get me out of here. And I am now back in Mr. Gambino's wonderful account that he so graciously let me share with him. Okay. Questions about creating either on the fly or manual assessment? Yes. No. Unless they've duplicated it, they won't see it. So that's a very, very good question. If you shared an assessment with somebody, make sure you let them know that they should duplicate it before you delete it. Otherwise, you'll not only delete it for you, you delete it for everybody you shared it with. Yes, absolutely.
If it goes up to no man, whatever you call it, why would you do it?
Honestly, it's because we change assessments. So here's one good example. I've shared out the kindergarten summative assessment with all of our kindergarten teachers. For the most part. I'm going to make sure you guys get them soon. But they've changed. And as the administrator, I want to give everybody the new version of the kindergarten summative assessment. Well, I don't want them to accidentally give the wrong one. So I'm going to delete it, and it deletes it for everybody, and then I'm going to share the new one. Does that make sense? That's why I would do it.
So most often you wouldn't.
More often than not, you're not going to end up deleting it. But you may find that there's a reason. Remember, you're going to spend a lot of time this year working in grade level teams, deciding on assessments, deciding how you're going to assess. It may be a lot easier just to delete it once, so it goes away for everybody. Okay? Any other questions about creating a manual or a on-the-fly assessment? Okay. The last thing I want to show you in assessments is how to make an item bank assessment. So you are now in a position where you've looked at your biweekly, and the biweekly assessment that aligned to the content standards doesn't align to the Common Core standards. For some reason, none of the questions work. And you're like, I don't know what to do about that. Well, you have an option to create what's called an item bank assessment. When you make an item bank assessment, this is the reason why I'm not used to punching in the number, you don't have to tell it how many questions you want to put in. Because you're simply going to choose questions by standard that you want to cover. Now I have to tell you, kindergarten, first and second grade, they're not given a lot of coverage. Anybody know why kindergarten, first and second grade wouldn't be given a lot of coverage? Not a tested grade. So there are some, and there's a lot for some standards, but there's also going to be some standards where there's zero coverage for it. And that's something that you're going to have to deal with for right now. As we continue to build out through Common Core, these item banks will get bigger. They're just not there yet. Remember, we're in the first year of true implementation, right? So the testing companies haven't developed these yet. I did get a message today saying that by the end of July, supposedly, there's going to be an influx of many, many more new test assessment questions for K1 and 2. Is that really going to happen? I don't know. The wheels grind very slowly in the bureaucratic part of education, right? They expect us to move fast when they're moving slow. At any rate, if you choose an item bank assessment, it is going to take you to another website. It's all part of Illuminate. It looks like Illuminate, but it's going to ask you to do a new login. It's going to ask you for your login information. You're going to use the login information that you have for your email. It's going to ask you to create a login and all of that information. Okay, you're going to use the login you have for Illuminate, the one that you created, and it'll sign you into the item bank. Then you're going to go from there. Okay. Once you're in the item bank, it's going to look like this. Again, it's going to ask you to create your assessment. Again, you can see I've made a practice tester 5. Okay? And you're going to hit create. And it's 12:30, so I'm going to stop. You guys were supposed to tell me what happened. All right, go get your lunch.
Where did you get that? Because when I put the
Okay. Yeah, now you have to use your email. And
for this one today.
Your email. So use your email, or just move your portion.
Actually,
I believe it's passed.
it's already 5% battery.
I think we have to probably
So is that why you're able to see? How do you ever know? Like, I mean, they can home at any time.
I might.
Hello, Mary. How are you today?
Okay.
And then that'll, you'll be able to upload that into.
I thought it, I cannot.
So what'll happen is, yeah, all that will transfer over to, yeah. So I've got my information.
Yes, I understand completely.
I taught
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. So I did really eat two breakfasts just to deal with this situation.
Yeah, it's not the one right there. One of the gals that I taught was one over there.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to go that far. The one I taught, you didn't have to.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to get you guys in stuff.
You didn't have to be
Students had to do that.
So the teacher.
Oh,
is
really?
The one on 65th.
Yeah, no.
The one I taught at, we
You
only
did,
had
and
to
it
do
worked.
that
Yeah.
when the parents.
Oh,
picked them up.
Miss Bell, use the password that you made. And she got in doing
I did.
And it didn't work for you?
That's what I'm saying. The
It
one
looked
I
like
just
you
made
could-
today.
It looked like you could make your own password all over again, like you could log in. I just put in the same password to keep it easy, but it said you are now logged in.
That's what it should have done.
Yeah. Well, I tried both of them, invalid.
So if you click on where it says,
School.us, I mean, I know what the, I wrote it down. I wouldn't have- Go through this mess, and here we are. Right there. And we're going through this again. Where? What little
the capture.
Oh,
It wants to make sure you're not a computer.
So what am I doing?
Go grab your lunch. And then we'll come back and we'll do it. I don't want you to do it with the tablets. I want you to have it. So you have to type in whatever that says.
Type it.
211.
Oh, this here?
Yeah.
I don't even see.
No, we are starting.
No. Here. Type in your password and type that in there. I gotta go use the restroom and I'll be right back.
Yeah, kind of squish tape here.
No.
You're right.
So, I don't think maybe after lunch we're supposed to start inputting.
I like that.
Assessments, I don't really. You have other people. I thought you just Brandon's bringing them all.
And the version is like the American has the
I think I like it. Eliminate seems pretty easy right now. All the other
I
stuff.
need to try it, or I'm gonna forget about
How was your orientation? Oh, yeah,
it. Oh, yeah. I'm
Parent!
It went well. It went well. You're supposed to have like 30 minutes. I had like 15 because Miss Fortune was running late, and then Mr. Atkins had to her part instead. It's team right here. It was. I just went everything like so fast. Showed up like
You guys.
step 5 maybe. Yeah, but I just went so like I didn't have to be like fast.
I see some of there.
Yeah.
I want my mustard, but you can have a nap. I don't want my mustard.
Oh really?
I might go grab one. Mayonnaise? It's underneath your. Here, you can have this one.
Yes.
No, thank you. I usually
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I haven't gone that way too much. I'm not neglecting this side of the room though. I don't think.
We have time to do that.
12:45.
They're all sorry. You don't want to.
Nope. That's why I had 2 breakfasts. One super early and one before we started.
Do you want the fruit? I can't eat it.
You can eat the fruit. I will definitely take the fruit. That I can do.
Has pineapple in it unless we'd like some excitement around.
What's that? No, I'm good. Oh no, I was allowed to go get food. I just chose to do the stuff.
So as far as creating assessments on here is concerned, you're only doing multiple choice. You can't put in your question.
You can.
Oh, so then
but you
can,
do like a
save the whole
rubric
thing.
score instead.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm gonna
So
show you.
for both, for multiple choice and that type, can you at least put the question in? So then, okay, so you don't have to write it on paper. You can do all of it on here.
It's gonna be a little overwhelming at the beginning, but eventually, like, we'll
And then,
Okay.
so we're really not going to need to be
I kind
using
of
this.
do too.
Well, no, we will want to use
That's why the
it
whole week off.
even before separate grade book in order to give assessments. Even if it's just culture assessment.
Yeah, and then you're gonna want to keep track of the score because you're not gonna have student lists.
So what are we going to? How are we going to do that if we don't have our grade book set up? Okay. And are we going to? So are we going to be going on the report card too? How that's going to look, or that's going to be your screen?
Because I don't even film. Okay, I get to do
So
that.
when you, so we won't have to worry about, because I know this is first grade. Match each column or on the grade or report card. So I guess you'll be able to do similar, or because we print it out, so maybe it will be like that, right?
No, but you'll have to create it like that. Your grade book will have to be created, and then you'll create your grade book will be created with standards, and then when you give the assessment, that's why it's so important to align questions with the assessment.
So not great at it, knows everything. But we don't, it's not like we're not ever just like an Shakespeare play out, we're still gonna be plugging the numbers in.
No, it does.
It does,
It'll
yeah,
make a big one.
so whatever we put into the standards, that's how we plug it. So we need to know, like, that's what you're saying, we figure report cards, to know what standards to create. And then is it gonna be a combination, last question, is it gonna be a combo report and?
Yeah.
Just all
Pretty
kinds.
good, but I didn't see any of that when I was there.
So as far as report card is concerned, we're not worrying about the content at all. Just to align them with our question.
Right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being on time. I want to reciprocate that and get started on time too. Which probably means we might end up a little early today, which means you'll have some free time to do your thing. Get to know each other, discuss with each other what needs to go on. So. No, I know. I'm actually waiting. I'm giving everybody a few more minutes to settle. No, I'll get everybody. Don't worry. Give me a minute, and I'll take it. I want to let everybody kind of settle in. All right. Thank you so much for being on time and your attentiveness and your focus during the first portion. We are actually well into what I plan to do after lunch already, because you guys have you've gotten it pretty much every step of the way. So originally I had planned to just do the overview of Illuminate, which was the 5 links, and then you were going to have lunch, and then we were going to get into assessments after lunch. So we're already into assessments. We've done the first 2 types. What were the first 2 types called? Does anybody remember? On the fly and manual. And then we are working now on our item bank assessment. And I've been informed that if you use the username and password that you created for Illuminate, you should be able to get in. Now, let me ask a question. Let's see. Was it your email address or just your username? It was your email address. So use your email address and the username and the password you created for Illuminate, and it should get you in. Okay.
Use email address
For yes.
and you can bell. If you said
I-
just the first one.
I understand that. So use your email address for this one and your password. Okay. So we're gonna have to work that out at another point.
I don't think I use my email.
Yeah.
Are you able to change my username?
Yes.
I'm not a marketer anymore.
Yes. I can change it for you. Yes. Please send me an email with your new name, because I don't think I know your new name. Mrs. Walker. Congratulations, Mrs. Walker. All right. So you are in the item bank assessment area. Okay, this is going to look a lot like the manual assessment area you were in before. However, it's got one key difference that I want to show you. So the first thing you do again is automatically you have to write in the title of the assessment. It's going to save it for you. You go to your next link and it says to add items. And maybe it'll let me. Okay, so it's loading. My email or the internet is definitely running slow. This may be a challenge today. Nope. Uh-oh. Ah, that's right. Okay. So I'm in the create assessments. I'm actually making a new assessment. Don't worry about that right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So we are in the item bank assessment. Again, you're going to just title it. And then you hit create, and it's going to save it for you. And then you go to the next link, which says add items. So there's two ways you can progress through this. You can use the continue button, or you can just use the links up top. Okay? Now, each of the links, they're not required. But if you go through them and you don't save something you did on it, it won't carry it over to the next part. So it's important to go through the links at least once. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do add items. And so the first spot you're going to see is where it says select standards. Item banks. The two item banks that you want to use are EduThink and Inspect. The reason why those are the two that you want to use is because those are made by publishers who pay test makers to make test questions that are aligned to standards. If you click on that, you will also see there are other options. Many other options. There may be items that you have created. There are items that are made public by other teachers. And there are items that are made by people at Fortune School of Education. We haven't made any yet. Well, no, that's not true. I believe Ms. Cabrera has made some for kindergarten. However, and you will have, and Mr. Gambino, have you made some already? Okay, and Mr. Gambino has made them. So if you click Fortune School of Education, you can pretty much count on those being pretty good. These three sets are going to have a pretty good alignment to our curriculum and to the Common Core standards. However, the public one, it means any teacher who has made a test item and has made it public has items up there for you. These items could be good, they could be terrible. They could be easy because they're trying to set their students up to do really well. They could be incredibly challenging and maybe they're really online and maybe they're not. The thing is we don't know. Now, I'm not saying don't use public items because in some cases, especially for get grades, kindergarten, first and second, there's not a lot of test items out there. So what I would recommend is that if you're going to use public items, make sure that you unclick the other ones first so you know, number one, that they're public, and number two, you know that you have to vet them, which means you have to look at them more closely and think about, are they to the rigor they're supposed to be? Are they items that actually make sense? And again, to do this, what do you compare them to? What should you compare the questions to? Your summative assessments. Your summative assessments are a great place to start because we pulled all of those question types from the item bank. Okay? So we know that those have already been vetted. They've already been developed in a way that's aligned to the Common Core standards by professional test writers, the same ones that are writing the Smarter Balanced test. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, so you've got your filters to EduThink and Inspect. You go update filters. Your next thing is you can select item types. So if you select item types, and it's probably, what this will give you options of are the different kinds of items that are actually on the Smarter Balanced test, which means multiple choice, selectable text. All of those other item types that are on the Smarter Balance test are available here. Okay? You can choose with or without passages. When you're creating an ELA test, keep in mind that the Smarter Balance test is pretty much always based on passages. So you may want to use as many with passages as you possibly can. That's not to say every question that you put on every test is always going to have a passage with it. Because think about those types of questions that may not necessarily need a passage. You may have some language convention standards where you're not really worried about passages. Did you get it? You got it? Very good. Very good. All right, so you may have those situations come up where you have to be very cognizant of that situation. Okay? It's okay to use them. You just don't want to make your whole test that way. Okay? Questions about that? All right, very good. Attributes, you're going to have the option of changing the types of language. There's a few other things you can change on here too. This is something that I like a lot. You can look at your difficulty level. Okay? Those are some of the, you can look at your depth of knowledge level. Okay? So these are things that you can do if you know, for instance, that you want to test to a certain depth of knowledge, you can make that choice. So those are things you can do ahead of time. However, you don't have to do it ahead of time. Because once you start to search for items under standards, you can literally look at it as you go. So the last thing I'm going to show you is the thing at the very top. The reason I saved it for last is because this is where we go on to the next steps. The last thing I'm going to show you is where it says select standards. Here's the key. All of this stuff is always going to be like this when you first sign in. Unless you change it, this is how it's always going to be. So this is actually a good place to start, and you could always just start with selecting standards. Okay. That's what I forgot. Okay. So here it's going to come down, and you're going to see when you came here, remember we started in the details, in the add items. Oh, what happened? Where did I make a mistake? It's going to load the standard set that you chose. Okay? So now if we scroll down, we see the list of standards that we can choose from. And for some reason, it's already gone too far. Right now, it's literally choosing for all of the standards that are out there in Common Core. Okay, let's say we don't want that. So we hit Select Standards. It's going to bring it up. I'm going to hit Unselect All and hit Update Filters. And you probably had something where it let you select filter standards in the first place. I'm running into a little bit of a glitch right now. No? Okay. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. Okay. All right, that's why. I'm sorry. So if you're in details again, you have your title of the assessment. If you scroll down, and this is the key difference that I missed before, if you scroll down, you tell it what standards you want. So you go to Common Core State Standards. You'll notice it gives you some options. There's Common Core State Standards, and then there's California adopted ones. Do the Common Core State Standards. That'll give you more choices. Okay, the California adopted ones are good, but they're not the only ones that you need. So you do Common Core State Standards. You do all subjects. You want to go to your ELA. You're going to pick your grade level. And then what it's going to do is it's going to load a set of standards that you can choose from. Okay? And again, if you remember the labeling from before, here's your clusters. So you have your cluster for reading, for writing, speaking and listening, and language. Welcome. Thank you. They're drop-down menus, and as you drop down, they get more and more specific. So if we're looking in reading, we know that there's reading literature, reading informational text, and for grades K1 and 2, there's also reading foundational skills. If you hit those drop-down menus, you're going to see how they organize them for you. In the reading literature, it's got key ideas and details, and each one of these is a different set. So if you keep in mind what the Common Core standards look like, you'll be able to see how they drop down. And again, you can continue to dig down deeper. So if we're looking in the first set, We've got reading language arts 1.1. We've got reading literature 1.2. Excuse me. We've got reading literature 1.1, reading literature 1.2, and reading literature 1.3. What that means is grade 1, standards 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Again, you don't have to be too concerned about the CCR. These ones that have more drop downs, what you'll notice is you continue to drop them down, it narrows it down a little bit more. The CCR is the national level. This is the state level. Okay? We're okay with using the national level. And the reason we're okay using the national level is it's going to give us more options. And if you remember, the state is allowed to add to it, but they're not allowed to change it. A lot like we used to say, what do we used to say with our curriculum? You can do what, but you can't do what? You can supplement, but you can't supplant. And so using the national level works for us. Okay, so we can use the national level, and to do that, you simply click on it, and you'll see this little link come up. Okay? I would go through and find all the standards that are going to be on your assessments first. You may find a routine that works better for you, but I've done it 3 different ways, and I've made 7 tests that were about 50 questions each so far. So the way I found out that was best to do this is to go in and choose all the standards I wanted first. So I would go in and choose, and I always tried to stay at the national level. I would go choose them like this. And so those are the, let's say I was doing one that focused specifically on reading literature. So I know I have those 3 sets of standards, and then I would go ahead and hit continue. Once I hit continue, that next page that was a challenge before, now it says these are my selected standards. So overall, those are the standards that I'm going to get information on when I hit search. If I hit search right now, it's going to get me question types for all 3 of those standards. However, let's say I wanted to dig down to just one of them. If I click on that, it's going to bring up this box, and I'm going to hit unselect all. And then I'm specifically going to choose the standard that I want to look for. I'm going to hit update filters, and then I'm going to hit search. And it's already searching for me when I told it to update filters. And it will load results eventually. It might take a little bit longer today because our wireless is being pressed to its limit, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, so if you, yeah. Oh, all right. So, yeah. So now we are all over the place here. All right. So here, right? This is where we came in. This is where you gave us title, right? You scroll down. You pick the hit Common Core, not the California one, just the national one. Yep. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to play with this and get themselves some questions lined up. Hold on, I'll be right there. I'm going to get to the same spot you are. So I'm in Add Items.
Yeah, I don't understand.
All right, so I'm starting to see some lists of questions popping up for All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap once. My voice, clap once. All right, so you've probably already gotten past this point, but what you saw before is you came in and now you have the option of picking passages and questions. Okay, so here's a couple things to keep in mind when you're making an assessment. The more passages you choose, the longer it's going to take your students to make an assessment, to take the test. Okay, so one thing you want to try to do is make sure that you're using a passage as much as possible, right? So you get multiple questions for one passage. Now, if you look down, as you're scrolling down, it's going to tell you how many questions match the standard you're looking for, as well as how many questions are for the passage overall. So this passage, this particular passage for first grade, has 13 standards that actually match, or 13 questions that actually match the standard we're looking for, and 31 total that match a whole bunch of different standards. So what you'll probably find is the other standard that you're looking for will actually be covered in this passage too, which means you'll have multiple questions for multiple standards for the same story. Once you use it, it's going to tell you if it's been used. Okay? You're going to find, especially as you look at your summative assessments that have been shared with you, you're going to find questions that are already in use. If you come across a question that's in use, it means it's being used by one of the summative assessments. Okay? Worst case scenario is you use the same question that's on the summative assessment. I've tried to lock down all of those questions. I may not have yet. If you use a question that's on the summative assessment, it means your students will see it a second time when the summative comes up. For kindergarten, first and second grade, it might not be that big of a deal, but it's something that we want to pay attention to. I'm under the impression that you're supposed to get a message that says it's in little green box that says this is already in use. I'm not seeing it as I'm walking around, so I'm going to be talking to our Illuminate person, seeing if there's a way I can lock down those questions that are on our summative assessment. Okay. So please don't make an assessment this week unless you absolutely have to with an idea. If you absolutely have to, let me know, and I'll go make sure that I give you a list of the questions that are being used for your grade.
Question on here, it says 3 alternates.
Yeah, so the alternates are for other standards that it covers.
Okay, so what we're talking
Yes. Other questions?
And I know I saved it because all of the words.
Are you in the bank or are you in
No, it was I clicked the
okay, so are you but you're so what you're looking is you're looking in Illuminate, you're not actually looking at the so go to assessment, go to Go to this item. So now you gotta sign it. You gotta get that in. Did you get
Now I'm gonna set.
now click on the session. So this is going to be the list of
Assessments.
Where did you get?
I give up.
Okay, so your next step is to choose your items. So once you've chosen your items, and I'm not going to choose items this time because I don't want to start to use up items that you may end up wanting to use. Once you've chosen the items for your account, it's always going to tell you when they're in use. So when you go back to make a new test, it will say in use already. I know that because I've made so many with the different ones. I'm going to try and lock down the ones that go to your summative assessments, meaning you won't be able to use them, so you don't use them multiple times. Keep in mind that for grades K1 and 2, the number of questions you have available to you is lesser because you're not a tested grade. And right now, there's just not as much out there. There's going to be more, and we'll get there for you. Okay? All right. Now, while you're making your test, let's say you decide you want to go back and pick another one of your standards. You go back up to the spot that you were in before. I always unselect by clicking on it, and then reselect the next one. And now it's going to update just to go to that other standard that I'm filtering for. So this is the reason why you want to do all of the standards up front, and then go and filter them later. Okay? If you don't do all of the standards up front, what's going to end up happening is you'll go in and you'll have to go back to the previous page to reselect the standards that you want. And it takes a lot longer. The organization of this is a lot better this way than it is back on that other page with all the drop-down menus, right? The drop-down menus are great once. You never want to use them again after that. And I know that because every time you go back, it takes another minute to 2 minutes to reload. This doesn't take a minute to 2 minutes to reload like it does if you do it this way. Okay? So when you're in your details, you should always do what first? Select all of the standards you want in details, and then once you get over to add items, you can unselect the ones you're not looking for and filter for the right ones. Is everybody clear on that? Okay. Your next step, you're going to have the option to review. I haven't added any assignment items to mine, but if I had, they would all be listed here. You would actually see all of the different items that you had chosen. Okay? The next link over is the overview. Let's say you decided you wanted to move questions around, put them in different spots. You can do that. The booklet is going to ask you how you want to make it. So again, by grade level, this is going to be important, right? Because if you're in first grade, you're going to want a bigger type, right? You're going to want more space. You're going to want it set up in full pages instead of columns, right? You're going to make it bigger so it's easier for your students to actually deal with the test itself, right? Whereas if you're teaching sixth grade, little tiny text with columns that are 4 across is going to work pretty well, right? But for your grade, that's not going to work so well, okay? The last step that you have is to publish. And again, I haven't added questions. I'm going to go add a question real quick just so I have it, because I want you to see. I didn't narrow it enough, apparently. There it goes. All right, so I'm going to add these questions here. So when I add the question, I simply hit the add button. And I go, okay. That's letting you know it's covering more than one standard. Okay, and here's the nice thing is it tells you how many items you have. It has the standards the number of standards you're covering, the different types of questions, and how many passages. This is the title of the passage, and then this lists which standards these go with. And the standard that I was focused on was this one, but I also hit this standard, and this standard, and this standard, because some of these questions hit more than one standard. Yeah?
So if it hits one more than one standard, if you didn't focus on it, will it also use them? Or do you have to actually?
You can tell it not.
But
It will if you want it to.
it will, and then when you grade it, it'll put it in the right standard.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so you've selected your questions, and again, you're going through the steps. When you do the review, it shows you the test itself. So it shows you the passage and the questions that go with it. It looks just like it does when you're selecting it. Your overview, this is if you want to move questions. So you can move these around. Let's say you wanted this question to be the third question instead of the first question. You can move them around. It's just drag and drop. If you decide for some reason, hey, I don't want that question anymore, you can go back to the review, and to remove the question, you go find the question itself and hit the X, and the question goes away. Right? Go back to the overview. You've got question 1 and 2 now. Those are the only ones. Again, you create the size of your how you want it to be printed. We're talking about first grade, so I'm going to do 14-point type. I'm going to have some large spacing so they can write around it. I'm going to have lines. I'm going to have them use lines for the constructive response. I'm going to give them 10 lines that's got lots of space. I do want a teacher edition, or in this case, I'm going to generate the teacher edition, and I could generate it from here. If you generate it from here, it's not in the system yet, meaning you won't be able to grade it yet. Okay? So you won't be able to do the grading that I'm going to show you in the next step. However, that's where you get to this next part, and you see where it says publish. The nice thing about where it says publish is it gives you an overview of what you have. You can see I picked 2 questions. They're both medium difficulty. They're both at level 1 and level 2 of depth of knowledge. They even tell us what Bloom's level it's in, which is level 2 here for understanding. Now, if you want this information later, you have to go in and enable it. And I always enable it, because that information is useful at some point down the road, especially when you're comparing your assessments to the assessments that are your summatives. Right? And your summatives were based on the crosswalks that we had that told us what you had to do. Right? Okay? So your last step is to click publish. I am not going to publish this because I don't want this to end up in mine. But now we publish the test itself, and that sends it back over to our Illuminate account, keeping in mind that you're in a different spot than you were before. Okay? Is everybody clear on that? Okay. Questions before I go any further? I want to make sure everybody's clear. All right. So, yes.
So when you're going through and you're selecting the questions that are on in the bank,
yeah.
And then it goes to that next box where it talks about the other standards that you did not hit.
Yeah.
So that's not just out of those 3, even if you only filtered them down to 2. It's whatever standards that it sees that it matches to.
Yeah.
So when you hit OK, instead of just having the 3, it might push you up to, like mine pushed up to 5.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so even if you're not necessarily testing for those standards, you could use that information later to see if students are understanding that standard. Because one of the things about Common Core that has been very prevalent is that we find that some questions actually meet more than one standard, which they've done that intentionally. They want the standards to go together. You'll find this even more in math, where the practice standards are sort of the overarching standards, and then the math standards themselves cover more than one standard, because they go with critical thinking, they go with different parts of the math. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, very good. So you've published, and now it's time to go back to your actual assessment. And it looks like I'm going to have to go back the hard way. That's okay, though. So I'm back here. I am in my assessments. And once you publish, you will find your assessment on your actual page. So these are the assessments, again, that are either shared with me or ones that I created. And I'm using Mr. Gambino again as an example. And actually, did I spill my stuff? I am going to become Miss Bean now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to being myself, and I'll show you why I'm going to become Miss Bean in just a second.
Mr. Pepper, you said that you're going to lock down the summative item.
I'm going to try. I have to go figure out how to do it.
Okay. Because I know that when Mr. Gambino and I were working on the tests, it told you when you've already used a question, if you're in that assessment, but if you're doing a different assessment, it has
I got to go figure out how to lock them down. So that's one thing that I thought it did automatically, but yeah.
You know, once you've created the test and you published it, and say for some reason, you don't like a test question on there, you have to recreate the whole test, or you can go in and out.
It's a good question. So that's a really good question that I want to answer, and I want to make sure everybody hears it before we go to the next step. Okay. So Ms. Kyoto asked, if I go all the way and publish an assessment, and then I find that as I go through it, I don't like the question on the assessment. For some reason, it looked good at the first time, but now that I've printed it and I've talked to it, I just don't think it's a good question anymore. So the way you change it is you have to go back to the item bank. And when I say go back to the item bank, when you go to assessments, you're going to go to visit item bank. And the reason why you have to go back to the item bank is because you can't change it after it's been published in its published state. Okay, so you go back to the item bank, and when you go back to the item bank, you'll see it looks very much like what you had in Illuminate. If you go under assessments, you'll actually find the ones that you made. Okay, you can edit these. You have to duplicate it first. So you have to duplicate it, and then you can edit the duplicated one. And then you have to republish it, and then go get rid of the other one that's in your account. Does everybody understand that? Yes.
One question I had, I wasn't sure, and I have no idea how I discovered it.
Okay.
But there's a section where all of the standards are listed, and then you have maybe like however many questions are available. You just go in and check in. So I was wondering, like I said, I don't know how I got there, but I found that to be very useful when I was looking for example, standards that I couldn't find because there may have been like 15 pages going and going. Now it's been there for about 45 minutes and you can't find it.
Right. Right. So that's in the select the standard where you're talking about when you click on select the standard and you deselect to select all of them. So if I'm here, and I think this is where you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may not know exactly what you're talking about because I don't know if I think that's what I've seen. So you're here, you're in the add items, right?
Yes, maybe.
This is where you're in add items, and you're like, okay, I want to know how many questions I have for each standard. That's over here. But let's say I want to make sure I'm just filtering for the standards that I want. Here, it brings up all the standards that you've already chosen from, and you can filter out to just the one that you want. And
that's smart, and that's what I just put done today.
Yeah.
I said that earlier.
Right.
But also, there's another page where all of the standards are listed across, and then there are items. There are actual items for each standard that you can just go through like a spreadsheet. Not even a spreadsheet, I guess you can just go through. So if I said to myself, I wanted 5 items or 5 questions per standard, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go to the next standard, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I've not seen that before. I have not seen that before. When you figure out where that is, please let me know. because I have not seen that part of it yet, and she certainly didn't show it to us.
You saw it? You found it?
That's not something that I've been taught. So that sounds like a cool feature that I might like too. Maybe would have helped me make 7 different assessments. All right, other questions before I move on?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm in my assessment,
Mhm.
and over here it does not have any. How do I get out of it?
So you're in your item bank, right?
Right. I'm in the item
So
bank. How do I get
you
out?
want to go back to scroll up, go to click on your name.
No,
So yeah,
it does have something to do with it.
it could be. So it's supposed to have a link that actually lets you go back. I'll show you what the link looks like. Okay, so Mr. King brought up a really good question. I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. There's 2 pieces to this that I want you to catch. Number 1, there should be a link that says return to Illuminate from your item bank. I have noticed that that does not always exist. And the reason why I think it doesn't always exist is that at some point you actually get logged out of Illuminate. So if this link doesn't exist, okay, so let's say it does exist, but let's say it didn't for some reason. What you would have to do is open it and go back to Fortune School, and then you would just log in again. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Yeah. Yeah. So go to review. Go to review. And then if you scroll down, you see it. But it looks like you've already published this, so you can't change it. You have to make a copy of it first. After you can't do it. You can only change it before publishing.
So her question was pertaining to only before publishing. So if before publishing I found this link, I would have been able to find it.
Okay.
See if I can find it.
All right, so I know that we have taken in a lot of information. It is 1:25. So I'm thinking what I would like to let you do right now is play for a little while. So I want you to play with building an assessment, work around an assessment. I'm thinking about 10 minutes. So that way if you run across something that you're confused about, you can ask. What I want you to do is play with making an item bank assessment. So pick a standard, pick 5 questions for it. Pick something that maybe you can use in your first week of school, or not in your first week, in your second week of school when you start to use your curriculum. If you're at Hardy Brown, I know that's actually after 20 days, right? Or is it 10 days or 20 days? After 8 days. Okay. So whenever you can start using your curriculum, if you have access to curriculum materials, you can use that right now. If you don't, that's okay. Just play with making an item bank assessment. I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do that, and then I'm going to show you the next step, which is administering the assessment to your whole class. I'm going to show you how to administer the assessment online, and especially for those of you that are first grade teachers and kindergarten teachers who give tests verbally, I'm going to show you how to administer the test for that. So I'll show you all of those things next. We're going to wait 15 minutes so you can play with your assessment as much as you want, and then we'll come back. So I'm going to set the alarm now. You may work on your assessments. Go.
Yeah, it's just lining along question one.
We're actually supposed to be
Before? No, did I? I made changes to week 3. Yeah, because for some of the Common Core standards you guys already typed, I just copied and pasted it.
Quick question.
Yes.
So my assessment that I made, I got locked out, not shown up.
So, click everything. Are you in? What are you in? Are you in item A?
I'm in the
No, it's not gonna. I still work for you.
I did also. Okay, so I have it
Take off the grade 1.
right here. This, it comes up here.
When I was gonna go back to.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was thinking. I was gonna
Margaret,
switch
that's
to
what they
what
This is the very first one we made. She did this earlier. This one, so you were looking at my that down.
That's why, but if you don't link it, that's how you go when it comes to like for something like that, like culture wise, I think it's so I'm not really reporting a great deal of things. Yeah, I don't think so many standards.
So what I don't know, there's
Yes.
It's about how. Yeah, it's teacher wrote that right here, the county students, so it's about how they like to impress. Now, so that's
Otherwise, you're gonna have to.
Think about it. We're not gonna have
Well, I will show you for the
They already have to.
I would try because
Okay, so then, so if you could send me the creators.
Well, some of the assessments are there, but they're definitely not something stuff. So you can change
that's so flexible. I have to forward that. There's no mandate. So what I would say is do something that you already have a guide for.
Yeah, that's the national.
And look at how you would write it.
Yeah.
But that would give you an idea of, what that would do is that would give you an idea of standards. Right. You know what I mean? That way you work with one section, then I can work how they should be, and what they look like. I feel like you could try to create an
I have something.
Usually national or
Yeah, that's why we're doing. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that there's almost things. I still know where they're going.
At some point it shifts. In the beginning of the year, you're reading.
Math is not happening.
That what you're seeing right now is
I mean, my biggest thing
Our main over time.
Okay, I'm just trying
Wait, what? Bus is us. Okay? Bus is us.
Oh, right.
Google Drive.
Oh, okay.
Or screen sharing sometime.
That's why when everything there.
No, I thought we were on.
This is an example to translate into. Well, now be careful. That will work with the Chromebook. Wait. You cannot scan with the Chromebook. That's why we got to go to the website. They're working on adding Chromebook support this coming year. That's the way it'll be done.
Well, I was trying to see if it was correct, and I don't. You were talking,
but don't get that on that yet. You gotta stop the boy.
I
What I'm envisioning is more for that TPM, maybe not give it. And so then.
I'm sorry, say again?
Depends on how many items I see. That's the thing is, ideally, I would love that. You know, I haven't seen this do this yet. What I was thinking about was build items ahead of time.
only got 5 minutes.
We're going to try
I tend to disagree. I expect you can do anything you want to do. But, right.
That's not, well, that's
well, and not in the register, it's in the document, it's in the, you know what I'm saying? Yes. So for those ones, so from 1 through 4, it's just word analysis. So that might be the top so you can use this because for me, it follows in all the channels. For example, when I'm very down, it follows in Tom Ford. Well, this can guide you to get you started.
According to help define where you are.
Okay, 1 minute warning.
I'm pretty sure we
Just don't erase anything. I'm using your account.
most of these are hard. And then with exception,
I mean, if you want to raise your hand because you're sure, I'm good with it. Well, no, you can go if you're in.
Second, third trimester,
Yeah.
it explodes, especially when you're in that
But then I guess a lot of I found out a lot of I do it.
No, don't do anything. That's if you want to move stuff around. You're gonna go. Pick how you want to look. Okay. And then go to pub. You can if you're gonna actually use this pub, but right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Should I do fist up, listen up? Should I just ask and expect everybody to come to order, or do you want me to clap? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, come on back for me. So, you guys have been awesome. I've been able to walk around and watch you build assessments. Okay, I've been able to walk around and see you build assessments. You guys have all figured out how to work through the assessments. This isn't going to happen overnight. It takes practice. Okay, these things will get easier as you continue to do them, keeping in mind that more often than not, which type of assessment are you going to create because you're using your curriculum? Manual. You're going to use manual more often than not. Okay. Now, I want you to base the vast majority of your assessment on your curriculum, because then you don't have to create as much. Okay? You're going to find your curriculum aligns quite often. Not always, but quite often. And when it does, you should take advantage of it. You should take advantage of not having to write more assessment questions, not having to choose more assessment questions. Okay? The next step that we're going to talk about is how do you actually give the assessment? Okay? And this is actually where you start to see Illuminate is going to be helpful for me. So what I'm going to do right now, I think there's too many people. I don't think I made enough answer sheets, but that's okay. I am going to hand these out. Now, keeping in mind that I'm always going to give best practices, I don't want you to hand them out until I say go. So don't pass them down until I say go. If you've ever had PD with me before, you know how this is going to work, right? Everybody remember how this works? Excellent. So don't pass them out until I say go. Pass them out until I say go. I'm wondering if I'm going to have enough. Not quite. You guys don't have to take the test. You're on my A speed. All right. When I say go, you have 3 seconds to pass them to your left or right, and make sure everybody has one. Ready? Go. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Braxton's, Mr. King's team earned a point. Who else's team earned a point? I'm looking for teams that are slanting. Our first grade team up here earned a point. Our kindergarten team up here earned a point. All right, so now, all right. So again, best practices right there. Just very quickly, I'm sure you're going to cover this a lot tomorrow when you're doing setting the tone for learning. But always be positive, right? You guys have been awesome all the way through. So the next thing you're going to do is actually give the assessment. So this is where we are right now. We've been developing assessments for a while. We're going to take a quiz. You guys ready to take a quiz? All right, so we're going to take a quiz. The way we're going to take the quiz is I am going to go and I am going to be Miss Bean. And so when I am Miss Bean, I'm going to go back to her dashboard so you can see that I'm in her account. And I believe I'm in her account. I am. All right? And so I'm going to go to my assessment list. If I was Miss Bean and I was going to give this quiz, I would go to my assessment list. I'm going to go to List Assessments. And you can see that I've created my Illuminate Data-Driven Instruction Quiz. It's only 5 questions long. You guys are going to do great. The beautiful thing is it has everything to it. And you can see in my overview, I didn't link any standards because we're not talking about standards. I don't have question groups. I just simply have 5 questions that I need you to answer. So I'm going to scroll down. And one of the things that you can do is you can actually upload materials. So I have uploaded my quiz questions. And so I'm going to download it now. I am going to open it. And I am going to view it in focus for you. And if you have, ooh, that's not big enough. Okay, is that better? Okay, I can make it a little bit bigger, but I'm going to have to scroll it down later. All right. All right, so I am going to give you the quiz. All you have to do is bubble in the correct answer. So questions 1 through 3 first.
Can we use a pen?
Yes, you can use anything that you have to write to bubble it in.
Oh.
All right, so I'm thinking 3 minutes for the first 3 questions. Actually, no. I'm going to give you a minute for the first 3 questions, and then I'm going to scroll down.
Oh, I think
What was your password the first time you logged in?
Oh, right.
I know on grade cameras, I know my students.
Everything is everything is no, it's where you're doing when
It's better.
I went to assessments, so go to your list of assessments. Go back there again. And then if you scroll down, you'll see my assessment. Click on that. Scroll down. And you can see I uploaded the questions and where it says test materials. You can download it. Either way, you can generate it and see what it looks like. All right, question number 5. I'm scrolling down. Question 1 won't be there anymore, so make sure.
Make up your own question.
All right, when you're done with your quiz, simply hold it up for me and I will come to select it from you.
He's wrong.
We'll see. Nice. I saw some wrong answers. It's gonna come up. It's gonna show
Okay, so I have your quiz results, and And I am your very excited teacher who just gets to find out how well I've done in giving you the information that you needed to learn today, how well you have focused. So I'm going to go to Illuminate, and I am now here. This is, again, in assessments. So when I go to my list of assessments, I go to my list, I find the assessment that I'm using. This is my Illuminate Data-Driven Instruction Quiz. I'm going to click on that. And then if I wanted to, if I still needed to print out answer sheets, I could scroll down here, and you have a few different choices for how you can print your answer sheets. One way you could do it is to print the answer sheet blank. What that means is it won't be pre-slugged with student names. Okay, this is probably what you're going to use. Not probably. This is what you will use for your entry-level assessments. The reason you're going to use this for your entry-level assessments is because you don't have students in yet, but you still want it to score it for you super quick, right? Okay. All right, so I printed the pre-slugged ones, and so I just clicked on this. It actually downloaded this as a PDF, and then I printed it. I can't print here, so I can't show you the whole process, but however you print at your school is how you're going to print. Okay? Once you've given the assessment, you're still in that same overview, and now you can start to look across. Again, you have information about your assessment. This one tells you the name of it. It tells you who wrote it, if you borrowed it from somebody, if somebody shared it with you. It's got some information here that was published. This is all the stuff that you published before. I didn't link any standards. I could link standards if I wanted to here. If I made the test on the fly and I wanted to come back and link standards later, I could do that. I could align it to specific questions. It even has a spot where I could go through and tell what the answers to the questions are. Okay? The last thing that I want is how am I going to go about getting the information that's on the test. So Mr. Gambino, can you come up here for a second for me, please? And Mr. Gambino is going to be my first grade student. And Mr. Gambino, grumpy as he is, Mr. Gambino is going to be my first grade student, and I have to give a one-on-one test with him. So I have to give him the test questions verbally. So if I really wanted to, I could go here, and where it says responses, I'm going to click on where it says student responses. And I'm going to go to where it says enter. So I click on that, and it's going to bring it up, and I'm going to go, okay, I am looking for a student without data. And I'm going to go ahead and go find students, and it's probably, and now I have the grid with the score, right? So Mr. Gambino, I'm going to have you move out of the way so they can see it real quick. And this has brought up all of my students in my class. And I have a few different options for how I can go about inputting this. I can enter responses by column. So I can go for every student, I can go across every column. The date taken, question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The nice thing about this is if I want to do one for all of them, I could go, okay, date taken was the 29th, and everybody did it that way, so I could go fill down, and it fills it down for me. I can go back and change it if I need to. Okay, if I do it by column, I got to save on each one. Okay, I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so now the other way I can do it, and this is for your kindergarten and first grade teachers, is I can do it by student. Now, here I am on Caleb Brown, a.k.a. Mr. Gambino.
How you doing?
Very good. And I have my list of questions. Okay? Now, when I made my keys, if I wanted to do, if it was just a verbal answer, and I wanted you just to say yes or no, I would make it true or false if I was working with my first grade. And true would mean they got it right, false would mean they got it wrong, and while they're giving me the answers, I would literally go in and put true or false all the way down. And now it's going to score it for me. Okay? So did that answer the question for my first grade and kindergarten teachers who are wondering how to score? Yes, question.
No, just real quick. So something, what Ms. Pepper just showed you would be really helpful for like the bi-weeklies. What you could do is go in first to where you fill by column,
fill them all in as true.
Yeah.
Then all you have to do is change them to false when they make a mistake.
Yes.
There's less typing you have.
Very good. Very
And
good.
that way you're just monitoring when they make a mistake as opposed to typing true, true, false, false, true, true.
So
false.
for those long passages that they read, would we put out
So
100 100 words?
the way I did it before was I did it by word, and so that I was marking true, false for every word. Now that's a lot. Another way to do it is that you could make it based on percentage and just keep track of the score. And can you enter percentages in here for a question? Or?
If you were going to make the scores that way, so when you create your answer key, you can say by rubric, and it'll give you options.
Yeah, the sentence reading is the one where it's, for me it was easier just to have every word be its own 1 point, and then I weighted it when I went in the grade book, so it wasn't worth 100 points.
So you do 100 point item bank for
Well, no, but the overall number of questions for the assessment would be 5 for decodable words, 5 for high frequency words, and then 100 for sentence reading.
Okay.
And then I was marking true for all of them, and I only put false for the words they were. Now the tricky thing with that is here you're not going to be able to see which word is which because it's just Q1, Q2, Q3. So you're not going to be able to see that it's the word the.
But you got the words on the side. You got the word, the number, what it is at the end of a sentence, and you can just count them.
Roughly. Yeah, that's why I said when we were talking about.
So are you talking about for fluency?
No, so there's a sentence reading section where we have to count every word they get right or wrong each week.
It moves into fluency. So it's accuracy.
But even then, fluency, you do a fluency and sentence reading on top of each other.
So I'm not sure that you would actually do that in a movie. You might be better off doing that with another way and just have the overall score at the end of the internship.
Into the grade book.
Okay.
Quick question.
Hold on. I want to make sure I answer everybody. I'm going to go Ms. Cabrera and then Mr. King. No, so the actual questions, remember, are on a separate sheet. It does not put the actual questions into Illuminate. Even if you were doing an item bank assessment, the questions wouldn't be there. You'd actually have to go over to the item bank to look at it. Okay? Yeah.
So for under my reading, right, you can't see what is being tested in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be easier to normally test them like orally and then put in the final score?
You could do that if you wanted to, yeah, absolutely. And then you would just put it directly into your grade book under the standard. Yeah, instead of creating all of that. If it works better for you to just get the score, if this doesn't help you because you're not using a multiple choice test or something along those lines, you can absolutely grade it the way you normally grade it and then put it in your grade book. That's another option, definitely.
But if it doesn't go for the summative assessment, then we don't even have to put it in.
It depends on if your summative is your whole grade. And I know for kindergarten it's different than it is for other So that would depend on how your grading is broken. Your summative tests your whole grade, or is it, do you have biweekly count towards their grade? Okay, so, Mr. King, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make sure we hear everybody's questions, and so everybody hears the answers, so I don't have to answer the same question twice. Mr. King.
I could not see how you got there.
Okay, so again, if you went here, you're in student responses, and you go to student responses. When you go here, it's going to give you the option of doing it 2 different ways. If you hit enter, it's going to give you you're going to get here, and it's going to ask you to find students. So you would put your student in that you're looking for. You usually put your class, and you put find students, and it's going to bring up all of your students.
Back a little further.
What do you mean?
So, all I saw was that you were here.
Okay. So starting from the very beginning, you're in list assessments.
Right.
Okay? The first thing I'm going to do is go find the assessment that I'm giving, and I'm going to click on it. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is scroll. I'm here. This is the overview of the assessment. I'm going to go all the way over to the right where it says responses, and then it says student responses. I'm going to click on that, and then I have to tell which students I'm going to look at. And I hit submit. And right now, you're not going to be able to do this because your current students aren't in there. Only last year's students are, right? Okay, so, and I did something wrong, apparently. But you should have Okay. And now I can't get students anymore. That's odd. It could be. It could be because we're in different spots, but let me double check. Huh. Anyway. No, it's because I'm not in the right roster. Okay. It's okay. Okay.
There they go.
Okay. Ah, why doesn't it like me? Yes. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back and do grading next. Take 10 minutes. Or 10 minutes.
Wiggle away.
Wiggle away.
And so what I'm looking at is if there's a way that next to each line I can put the word. At least on the paper copy, I would love to be able to. Right now we're getting very fast.
Right.
And I like my system. I could still have to put that grade in the grade later.
Right.
There's a way that I could give it without having to do that extra step.
Right. What I think you might be able to do.
You can blow this up bigger, and that would be a nice case here for like each word. It's still going to be redonkulously wrong once you get to the third trimester. First trimester is like 3 sentences. I am a boy.
Right.
That's a good track along with, but as it gets bigger,
Right.
But they said I was looking at the grade camp line. They're looking at
And your behavior.
and I'm like, oh my god, tell me when this happened.
Right, absolutely.
That's what we use.
Right. No, I know. And that's the one thing I keep asking. Like, the work with that.
Yeah, not yet.
I didn't have to bring a different camera in.
Yeah.
I can do it with my Mac, which I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they're adding more support for different models, cameras, all that stuff. And so now I heard that Chromebook is next in their list of targeting.
Right.
To make sure.
Which would make sense because Chromebooks heavily
Yeah, you want to market to the audience. The audience has Chromebooks now. So, because we're even working on like a mobile
Scared me every time I have a so she was like, it's time for me to leave.
Other schools taught us more inside. That's the first time she had her baby. She was already home with the part about yeah, we did practice.
She's 3 weeks old today. I mean, it's probably for months. I'm like, yeah, and the car, like, I got eat long. Oh, she's eating. Mom, like, she was
right.
And then my mom's with roots and stuff. And I got to feed off of each other, right?
Just stop.
Alex, give me 1 second.
She was about to be like, I hate her, but I think she's best on the.
So much. And with all of you, I've been working through.
Yes.
And I answered that question.
Okay. Oh yeah. I think, it's hard to do visuals. There's no
I figured it out. Oh, you did? Well, I think I did. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that we will have everybody.
We're very fast. I'm very fast. By the courage common courage. Language is all
I'm gonna, at some point.
Yeah, so these are the questions.
to be.
I'm thinking the standards are just surprised me. I'm surprised.
I'll show you the ELPC.
Yeah. Well, no, it's so it either be backwards or code regularly 12 months before.
Yeah, so it'll all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's sure. I show you around. Sorry, try.
No problem.
Whoa! What are you doing?
Okay. Raven? M-I-C-H-E-N. Oh, okay. So is it Raymond?
So the question would be like,
Fortune.
All I did was reset my password. It asked me if I wanted to reset. I said, okay, yeah, we'll try that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
That
learning
works.
how to do this.
That's
thing.
good.
I'm like, okay. We'll try it again.
Yeah, there's factor. Right. Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, I thought we should have
So, Mr.
Yes.
If I want to give my little test, I just create a some kind of my 5 question. One have to come in and so I can print out the test, give it to them, because right now we don't even have to put it online.
Right.
Okay. So like I saved everything. So now.
Now you come.
Okay, nice talking to you. And you can do it, and you walk away. Well, we're not going to now. We're not at all. After like the second semester, I think. Right. You'll get it. You'll get it. You guys all know that I'm just an asshole. What is this? I do. So you look, there's even.
Okay, so then I can just get that should be connected to what?
You're gonna have to probably print it from your other computer because I don't think that's connected to your printer, William. It's the same login information as you have there.
I send myself this email attachment.
No. It's the same. You can log in to Illuminate from any computer. Just download it from Illuminate.
Oh, that's so much nice. So much. It's your team that made my day so much better already. Right.
That's what I want to hear.
So I can have Illuminate on my desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
scripting, whatever. Translate out from.
I need a letter. A little tiny one.
Yeah, I like this one. Okay.
Good. That makes me excited that you like it.
Oh yeah, I have to save on my desktop. Yes, I do.
You didn't hear that from us. You don't like troubles.
So we were asking about the option to share. So when we went to publish, it didn't ask us if we wanted to share or anything like that.
Yeah. So when you go, are you back in Illuminate now?
Yeah.
So you got to be in. You're in the item. You want to go to back to Illuminate.
But isn't this?
Go to assessment. Go to list. Find the assessment that you're talking about. That one. Click on the checkbox. Scroll down. Go to hit the drop down menu. Go to share. And hit submit. And it's going to ask you who you want to share with.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay?
Thank you. And then just another quick question. I'm in the second grade. So this is noticing that we're taking out money. We're not teaching money, and it's being taken out of the assessment. What about the third? Some of our third grade teachers were talking about multiplication, and they were under the impression that in third grade the kids like know multiplication. That's not something that's taught.
I'd have to look. You have to look at the crosswalk. to find out.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I know when we did our year-long planning, that money
Should be on the crosswalk.
division-
Yeah, should be on the crosswalk. If you that explains it. All right.
Last year, we always have sessions.
The size of the right now.
I was like coming daughter will be 5 in November. Yeah, it's 6:30. How long do you read that every day?
I did that.
Toward the end.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring it on back. All right. So, if you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap once. Hey, guys. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have gone over how you can manually enter scores for KN1. That's very helpful, I'm sure. However, there's also times where you're going to give an assessment that allows you to use the nice little answers. And so when you have that kind of assessment, you're going to specifically use it to take pictures. And so on your other computer, the one that has the dock camera on it, that's the one you have to use for this. The dock cam is actually easier to use than mine because you just put it underneath it, and then you can take them off as you go. I'm going to do it on mine, and hopefully I have it lined up well. It's a little harder, but... Aha. And so then, right, so far I've got 80% and 60%.
What? Intercession. Someone's gonna have to stay in between the two PDs. This is extra.
All right, so.
You guys are scanning the box that goes around the bubble. It's an area you don't want the kids to mess with too much. In the bubble, but don't add extra marks inside the bubble in that line box, because that's what the software recognizes. It detects where the box is, and then it finds the bubbles inside.
And then, like I said, your grade cam works a heck of a lot better than mine does. But, let's see there. All right, so I got a few. All right, so I got a couple 100%. I got a couple information. I got some good information.
They must be sitting together.
So I actually don't know because it's got student names on it. So depending on which student you were, it'll tell us. So I'm going to go save and view results. And then what you can see is it gives you some overall performance data. And then it kind of tells you where each student did, what each student did. It also, I can also get a lot of other good information on this. I am going to jump out of this, and I'm going to go show you one that I did as a mock. but I wanted to show you how easy this is. Your grade cam works a lot better than mine does. And the reason it works better is because you set it in a simple place, and literally I've seen them do it where they just pull them off one by one, and it grades all of them very quickly.
Yeah. And so you have lots of options with the scanning. So one thing I recommend is if you look at your assessment and what your short assessment is and what your long assessment is, you can print off a master publishing for your kids that can be laminated in each 12 years. First grade, we know that our shortest tests are between 0 to 10 questions. Our longest test is up to 60 questions. So the bubble sheet that has 10 on the front, 60 on the back. It was 3 bubbles for each student on the front and back, and then last year. And then throughout the year, they could just keep using that same bubble sheet for any test they were taking that was choice. When they're scanning, when you're using the webcam, what I recommend is aim it in a way that it's, they can just walk up to it holding their test like this. And as they get closer, when it's scanned, teach them to move out of the way. and that's kids right behind. And then, so once they hit that magic range of where it's in focus, it's done. The other way is, as Mr. Pepper was describing, if you angle your camera down, the kids can just get them under there and keep moving. It can be a little picky with focus sometimes. And so if you're having trouble, just kind of work on moving it further, like he was doing, just further and closer.
All right. Yes, Ms. Hack, and then Ms. Cabral.